Today is Friday of the second week of Advent. People scoff at Scripture because they claim it is old and irrelevant. But today's gospel offers us an insight into human nature that is very of the moment. Jesus points out to his critics that John the Baptist neither ate meat nor drank wine, and they called him crazy. Jesus ate meat and drank wine, and they called him a glutton and a drunkard. So, which is it? Ascetical eating practices and gourmandizing are mutually exclusive. Clearly, something else is going on here. Perhaps the most glaring example of this kind of hypocrisy is to be found in the political claims today about deficit spending. Are deficits okay or not? In the past 8 years, the answer has depended on who is in power. Maybe this games playing is inevitable in politics, where party power is more important than two-party governance and the common good. But the real challenge is our having to deal with human beings, perhaps a parent, a spouse, a supervisor, teacher, coach, or priest, for whom this hypocritical thinking is only one manifestation of a narcissistic, ego-driven personality. This problem is compounded by people in groups, but let's stick with the individual people who have become implacable foes or immovable objects in our life journeys. Did God create human beings with these characteristics, or were they born normal and became that way? This is the problem of nature or nurture. The theological problem is clear. God cannot do anything, nor create anyone, that is contrary to God's nature, which is good. And so, by this logic, God could not have created hypocritical, narcissistic personalities. But could family or early life circumstances alone have given rise to such personalities and such people? My superficial investigation suggests that specialists do not know the cause, but theorize that the cause is partly nature, partly nurture. In any event, as this gospel and Jesus' passion and death show us, the hypocritical narcissists are an ancient problem, as vexatious as the related problem of evil, and the very dangerous one for many of us. Such folks are minefields of destruction that can cause lifelong damage to those who are near them. Do the rich promises of Isaiah in the first reading really have relevance for us in this circumstance? If you would hearken to my commandments, your prosperity would flow like a river, and so on. Or the psalm, those of you who follow the Lord will have the light of life. It is hard to see how these promises could be fulfilled in the way they are stated without some resolution to the hypocritical, narcissistic problem. To speak for myself, these questions fall into a category that is beyond my mind's ability to penetrate. The best I can do is to name the relevant pieces and try to hold them together and act on them in some balanced way. Here, for me, is what is relevant. First, I will acknowledge that these realities make it very difficult for me to believe in a God who loves us unconditionally, and that the Scripture promises are to be fully realized in this life. Second, I recognize that my individual experiences of God's blessing in my life give me reason to believe, despite the truckload of evidence to the contrary. Third, I will work to counter the damaging actions of such people to the extent possible without wearing myself out. And fourth, I will choose to follow the advice of Psalm 131. I will not occupy myself with things too great or too marvelous for me. like complex questions of evil and God's goodness. But I will calm and quiet my soul like a weaned child in its mother's lap. Doing all this requires God's constant infusion of love, patience, kindness, and the rest of the virtues into my life. So perhaps that can be our prayer for today and for all the days to come in this season of Advent until the Lord's birth.